Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Recruiters with No Limits, always live and never scripted. I'm here with my sidekick and co-host, John Ruffini. What's up, Johnny?
Good afternoon, Shark.
Good afternoon. We are 1 week away from where, the Big V, Vegas.
Vegas, baby.
You know it, man. You know it. So, and our
I'm a little
special
scared.
guest.
Not. Don't mind telling you, I'm a little scared. Vegas in Vegas with the Shark has me a little scared.
Hey, dude, you better start watching that movie Hangover, man. That's what it's all about.
Oh, man.
No sleep. I'm just messing with you. Hey, our guest today is the one, the only. He's an expert. I met him about 2 months ago. I mean, this guy's all over the place. Dan Morey, what's up, brother?
What is going on, Shark? John, good to be here, guys. I'm excited to finally get on the show and just cut it up with y'all.
Absolutely.
That's it, man. It's all shooting the crap, man. That's what we call it, man. And look, he got his logos there. Staffing Monthly, Staffing Mastery. I don't even have to say anything else, man. This guy's he's got his hands everywhere, every cookie jar you can imagine. So, Dan, just tell us a little quick about the history of you, man, and how you became where you're at now.
Yeah, absolutely, man. This is going to be the short version. So 16 years ago, I stumbled into staffing completely accidentally. It's a really funny story if you ever see me at a conference over a beer, but like most people got into it on accident, really, really loved it, had some success, have elevated and delegated, and I've since launched Staffing Mastery, which is a business development and executive strategic coaching company where I work with organizations to help them put the right systems and people and training in place to grow and scale. And I also have the Staffing Monthly publication, which is a video-centric digital publication for the staffing industry where I interview experts and thought leaders just like you gentlemen to share actionable insights with the industry to try to do everything that I can to help give back to the community of staffing and recruiting professionals that's been so fulfilling and rewarding to me. So that's me and what I'm doing.
It's a great format too. The Staffing Monthly, if folks out there haven't checked it out, very, very cool format, being a digital magazine where you've got, information in print, but you've also got video interviews and conversations. It's pretty cool.
John, it's not even cool. It's badass. I'm just going to say it like that.
I was going for badass. That was the level I was going for. Okay. So I appreciate that.
There you go.
I got to say something, John, and I wasn't sure if I was going to tell you this in email or share it on this show or just wait for you to find out. But you'll never guess who I just got to interview for Staffing Monthly. Throw a name.
Give me a hint.
Well, who do you want to have on this show?
You did not get Danny Cahill.
Yeah, buddy.
Oh my gosh, I'm so jealous.
Nice.
I did that for you, man. I did that. I was like, you know what, John wants Danny Cahill on, so I'm gonna warm him up. I told him you guys would be reaching out to him, so it was.
I did reach out to him. I'm gonna have to. Now I've got a follow-up to do. I reached out to him, but I've got a follow-up. That's awesome.
You guys had me going. You know who I thought it was? Gary V, because that's my boy. If we get him on the show, it's over with, man. 1 million views.
Yeah, but I'm staffing centric, right? Like I live in the staffing zone, right? But that makes sense. But I want to share
social media.
Right, Danny on.
That's awesome. I'm psyched.
It was an amazing interview. His episode is going to drop in the October. So in 2 weeks when we release the issue, you can see it in there. But it was a great chat. That guy's been there and done it. Like he's been to the top of the mountain and he had some amazing insights on where the market is going and how companies need to position themselves to kind of survive the next 3 to 9 months that are going to be a bit tight and turbulent for us. So he's a great guest. You guys should definitely have him on.
That's awesome.
Full of energy, and he loves to work out too, man. Straight up.
Oh my God, yeah.
Yeah.
You read his. If you read it, he put out a memoir years back. That's a really good read, and you learned a lot about Danny and the successes and challenges he faced over the course of his life. He had a really bad injury working out, which was really eye-opening and debilitating. But that's another story for another day.
Yeah,
he's a good dude. He was on our show for ISSA, John. I don't know if you know that or not, but he was he came on and spoke for a little bit. So I got to meet him on the podcast here. But
he's good.
We'll have to bring him on one-on-one, man, and rock
Definitely.
it out.
Yeah,
but he's no Dan Morey.
I don't know. I'm just trying to get to the top of the mountain like he's been there, done that. He's had a career and he's helped a lot of people. And I would love to get to the level that he's been so I can look back and say I've helped just as many people. So I'm grateful to be there. But so I wanted to share that, man. So definitely go check that interview out. And if y'all want to check out Staffing Monthly, it's going to be a lot of good thought leaders of our industry. The big names are coming out to share their guidance this month.
That's
I
awesome.
love it. And you know what I like about it, Dan, real quick, that, you're creative. What he did for mine, put me on the beach, and what he did for yours, John, and what other people, I mean, you put them out there like they're Hollywood. And I love that, man.
Yeah. Yeah, man.
Well, and
you
I
gotta-
like it because it's a similar format. There's no script, there's no pre-question, so I like the free form conversation because you never know where that's going to go.
and it's authentic.
Yep.
It's authentic.
Got it.
Like we're in recruiting. Like we hate when we ask questions and that the candidate gives us those canned answers that they've just been practicing over and over and
Come
over
on,
again
man.
to truly hide all their deficiencies. Like we're trained professionals. We know how to get through that. And it's like, I don't need to send you the interview questions or the test ahead of time. Like, let's just have a real conversation and figure out if it's good or not. Right.
Exactly.
That's where I roll.
That's
It
cool.
is. Awesome.
So in your coaching travels, you're providing guidance to executives, to companies. What are some of the challenges that you're seeing that organizations are facing right now in the climate that we're in?
Yeah. You know what? It's a great question. And there's three things that I'm seeing right now. The first one is what we've been seeing for a while. It's where are the candidates? Like it's just the market has completely shifted. The staffing and recruiting industry historically has been a bit laggard when it comes to adopting new procedures and technologies and ways to do things. And the market has just shifted forward faster, and we're struggling to find people. So that's always been a big challenge this year, and we see that one a lot. So the kind of the guidance I give is more around how do you open your mind to new techniques and tools and just ways of doing things. But the other two challenges I think are more interesting right now. And one is around planning. I'm actually starting to realize that probably a frighteningly low percentage of the industry does a great job at actually planning, of actually getting clarity on where they want to go, what their company and business needs to look like in a year, 2 years, 3 years, and actually creating a building plan to get there and creating that strategic plan and say, hey, this is what our company is going to look like in a year from now. This is who we need to be from a management team. This is what our systems need to look like. This is what our technology needs to look like and what it needs to do for us. And like, I'm noticing that a lot of people have a lot of confusion around how to actually create a plan to get there. So that's a challenge that I'm starting to see more and more lately. And I think that's because the turn of the calendar is coming and we're starting to think about next year already. But the third one that I think is most interesting is that people are just uncertain on what's really going to happen in the economy. Like we hear all of the recession talk and like it's almost like the media is going to will it into existence, but yet it's like and I don't know who said this recently, but I just heard this, but it's like I heard the economy's really bad everywhere else, but not for me. Right. And that seems to be the perspective. It's like, man, like everything else we hear seems to be really bad, but life is really good for me right now. So I think there's a lot of confusion on knowing, should I respond as if there's a recession coming, or should I respond as if life is good and I should be just kind of leaning into it? And those are some of the challenges that we're working through with the people I'm in touch with.
Well, it's interesting. So go ahead, Richard.
Well, you know what? When there's a recession or anything like that, if you're a smart leader, you're going to penetrate on that and and have value on that. We're not fearful. I mean, bring it on. That's when people are fearful. Staffing's going to boom when there's a recession because companies are going to have to rely on us.
Well, and it's interesting. So to follow up on that, Richard, it's been my experience that the better companies, the better leaders will push for growth during the recession internally.
Sure.
So that once you come out of the recession, you are equipped. A lot of companies are going to be like, oh gosh, times are going to get tight. Let's scale back and let's just get through it. Versus those that have the courage and the guts to kind of say, no, we're going to keep growing and we're going to invest in our people and invest in our headcount and our infrastructure so that when this thing comes out of it, we are prepared to, go forward. Whereas other people at that point will start to rebuild.
I've learned that lesson firsthand. So anyone that's heard my story knows that I got involved in, kind of 2007 and I stumbled into this industry and it was one of the best times to be in the industry. I mean, like at times were easy. Companies were flush with cash. Everyone needed people, it was great. But 2008, 2009, 10, they were some of the worst years in recent memory for this industry. And that's what I went through. And I remember we had the natural inclination, like most people, to camp. right? We said, hey, let's just weather the storm. Let's just hunker down. Let's lean out, and let's just weather the storm. We'll get through the other side. And we tried that. We really tried to weather the storm. And there was 2 inherent flaws to our process that we would have never found on our own. We actually had a very high-priced executive coach that was working with us at that time. And the first one was like, one, you guys want to hunker down and weather the storm. The issue is you have no idea how long the storm is going to be. So you don't know how to ration. And that was something I can understand from my days in the military. I'm like, oh, that's a really good thought. Like you don't know how to ration, right? And then the second one is you guys are not campers, you're climbers. So you're inherently, you're hardwired to be a climber always. That's just who you and your partners are. And that's true even today. We're just climbers. And if you try to play the role of a camper when you're hardwired to climb, there's going to be this internal conflict that's going to drive you nuts. And that was so true. We were starting to basically almost self-implode the company because we didn't know how to camp, and then we learned the lesson that Richard was, alluding to, is that in times of recession, in times of chaos, there's 2 sides. There's the companies that get crushed and they get devastated for whatever reason. And then there's the companies that thrive. And when you think about us being in staffing, selling business to business services, you just have to figure out which clients to go after. Which companies are going to thrive in that recession, and how do you align yourself with them to provide services to them? And if you're thinking that way, you can actually grow through a recession. And actually that time from 08, 9, 10 was some of the most exponential growth that we had as a company because we learned that lesson. And then we just applied that same exact lesson when the COVID dip hit back in 2020, and that's when I started coaching, because I wanted to teach that lesson to other owners and leaders at that time to help them get through, turbulent times back then. So I've learned that lesson firsthand, guys.
Well, you hit it right on the head. During the pandemic, guys, it was my best year ever out of 12 years, the pandemic. Everybody else was running around panicking, and I was just crushing it. It's like, seriously, when there's a panic, dude, that's where that leadership comes in. Be prepared. You said it, a slogan. It's Eagle Scout all the way.
Well, and that goes back to what you're talking about, leadership having a plan. Even if you're going to quote unquote camp, you got to have a plan for what you're going to do while you're camping. And to your point, somebody's always buying. You just have to figure out who's buying and be relentless about getting in there. So during those times, all right, so your sales staff, your recruiters are probably going to have to, make 2 or 3 times the normal effort to bring in the same amount of business, but it's out there.
So yes, I'm going to put an asterisk next to that one too. And you hit on this earlier, John. You said that a lot of the smart companies take the time during those slower periods or time of recession to skill their people up so you can come out stronger. I will tell you that if you don't want to have your people to have to do 2 or 3 times the amount of work to get the same results, skill them up now, right? Because more proficient people will produce better results, right? They will be more efficient and more effective with the work that they're putting in. So yes, if they have to do more work because we're in a tighter market, if you actually skill them up, they won't have to do as much work as your competitors will to get the results that you want from them. So you should really focus on really increasing the ceiling of your people if you want to grow your organization through a recession.
Okay, guys, I got to ask you, are we really working here? Staffing's not work, man. It's freaking fun.
Well, it's fun because we love it,
we love it. You're right on about that real quick, man, about the, self-efficiency. And I think what it is, when you get a candidate, you market them around different places. Don't lose that candidate. I think we keep spinning. We want new. Dude, I got the same people that's been with me for 8 years through different agencies and everything. I mean, you got to keep your team together.
Retention.
Yeah.
It's a huge aspect. If you want to grow, you got to retain.
Yep. And that's another thing. And there's retention on 2 fronts. There's retaining your temporary or contractor base, right? And redeploying and being proficient in that. But then there's retaining the people inside, right, guys? And I've actually seen that because we've been doing, on the acquisition front, looking at companies. And I've noticed that there's actually been a lot of internal turnover at staffing agencies, more so I think over the last couple of years than maybe the 2 years preceding that. And I think that because recruiters, we're subject to seeing all the glamorous jobs and all of the pay. Like there's not a recruiter out there that hasn't worked on a rec that they're like, I'm 10 times qualified for this position and it pays me more than I'm actually making to fill it. and it's amazing that we can actually retain those people. But I think that what happens when companies panic, when leaders panic, they get short-sighted, right? And they forget to cast the vision of the company, and they forget to align that cast vision to that of their people and say, hey, there's a future here for you. And they start progressing their people towards that future, and they started preparing and equipping and training them to be better versions of themselves in that future. And if you stop doing that, your people will feel like they're moving backwards, and they're going to be more likely to take that better opportunity and leave. And I think a lot of staffing and recruiting companies experience that right there. So you have to be very mindful about retaining your best people in your own company by making sure they know where they fit in your future and that you're developing them to be the top performer in that future.
Couldn't agree more. And to your point, it comes down to communication. And a lot of the companies, if an employee understands why they're there and how what their job is factors into the big picture of where the company's going and how it benefits both them as an individual and the company they're part of, they tend to want to stay there longer because they feel a sense of belonging. But when that information is kept hidden and it's like, oh, we got the strategy, you just do your job, that's where sometimes a disconnect happens and people feel disjointed and they tend to, look elsewhere.
It's true.
Well, the strategy is changing all the time, guys. We know that, So Dan, I got to ask you, so you're coaching different staffing firms. When you go in, they don't want to change. As we know out there, people like the same old thing, black and white resume. This all still works. They think after 30 years of being a guru that they can solve every problem. And I'm sure you know that in the last 12 months, it's totally changed. So how do you go in and convince them and tell them there's another strategy?
So that's an interesting question. And I will tell you that I'm not as subject to that situation as you're implying, because I'm aware that happens. And I value my time and the impact that I can have with my time enough to not align myself with people that I'm going to have to drag kicking and screaming the entire way. So when I actually engage with people, we have a conversation on the front end, and my pre-qualifier, one of them is they have to be open to change, and I have to genuinely believe it, So if they're not, like, if they're just like, oh, I want to have better results with what I've been currently doing, like, I'm not a mechanic. Like, I'm not going to come in and fix your broken down car so you can keep driving the same car to get you where you want to go, right? Like, that's really not what I do. Like, I can teach new ways, I can teach better methodologies, and I can kind of help you build a better car to get you where you want to go faster and maybe even further is probably the way that I do it. So part of my screening of, companies that I coach kind of screens those stuck in the past, this is the way I've always done it mentality, because I don't want to work. I want to have fun, so I don't deal with that too often. So maybe I'm not the best person to ask. Sorry.
Well, you know what, though, I respect that. And that's something that, I can tie that right back into, those recruiters that are on a desk and those business development folks, that you don't have to take every job that comes on your desk. You've got to evaluate it, see if it's worth your time. And it sounds like you're doing that. And if you get the sense that someone is not open to change and not, they just want to bring you in maybe to pacify people to say, yes, I brought someone in from the outside, then, I commend you for being able to walk away from that business and say, nope, that's, I'm not the right guy for you.
And that's my approach. And frankly, and this is something I teach all across the board, no is a complete sentence. And sometimes it's the most powerful, liberating sentence that you will ever use, and I teach people to use that, know when to use it to actually grow your business. But for me, I don't need to go out, and I don't want to sound, I don't know. I don't want to sound negative, or I don't want to sound,
go for it, brother. I'm here.
But I don't need to go out and coach. Like, I don't need to go do that. What I want to do is I want to make a mark. I want to have an impact. I want to help people, right? And the only way that I can do that is if I align myself with people that are actually open to wanting help. If I have to fight people on it, I could literally spend and waste a lot of my time focusing on someone that will never change, and that deprives someone else that maybe is open and willing to it that I just don't have time for. And I just don't want to ever put myself in that position, because I'd be negligent and I wouldn't be serving my audience the way that I truly want to. So
I love that about you, man. That's what it's about. For me on the other end, I love when they say no, because when I coach staffing firms and recruiters, you know what? I give them a little couple things. Within 2 months, they're calling me back, because you know what? That no is going to turn to yes. You know what? I'm just going to leave it in your end, and you do what you want to do and keep fellow. But I think at the end of the day, we're all here to help each other out, man. That's the biggest thing. And if you want the help, dude, we'll give you all the free stuff in the world too. I mean, that's you know how it is, Dan. You and John give so much free stuff out there that if they apply that, they might not even need us.
Well, and that's the point, Richard. They've got to want the help. People and the smart
Mhm.
ones, the only way we all get ahead, and we're, the three of us are living, breathing examples of this, is that you're always craving information. You're always craving to be educated on what's next, what's better, how do I become more efficient, more impactful, et cetera. And the only way to do that is to seek it out from those that have already done it or know
Yeah.
how to do it. And if you're closed-minded and you're like, no, this is good, it's always worked this way, God bless you, but you're going to be kind of in the dust of everybody else.
You got
Yeah.
it right.
There's no
know
standing
what?
still in this business. You're either growing or you're dying. I mean, that's
You know
just,
what? And you guys have to understand this, and you probably had a pet peeve. I've been in the industry for 35 years. Well, you know what? I keep saying this over and over. 30 of them years are obsolete now. I mean, it's that's great experiences, but we're in a new day and age with Gen
You got to
Zs and
adapt.
stuff like that, video resumes, all that stuff. Dan, I got to ask you real quick on another note here. What are you seeing the forecast for like the end of 2022? Is there anything that you're seeing out there since you're out in the forefront with all these experts?
what do you mean like seeing? Like give me like narrow that in a little bit. You mean like with the economy? You mean with business growth?
With the changing of the staffing firms, recruiting firms, you see more. I mean, we see the tech stack everywhere. Do you see
Yeah.
anything else coming aboard?
So the biggest thing that I see is the digital transformation that the pandemic accelerated brought basically the digitalization to everyone's acceptance level, right? So all these agencies that were a little bit reluctant to do it, or maybe they had like a good intention to do it at some point in the near to midterm future, like they were forced to do it now, right? So now they start shopping, which means when that happens, it's like chumming the water. So now all the software companies and the technology partners are starting to market more and introduce new products and services. And people are all excited because they know they've got these problems. They know they want to be on that forefront of technology. Because once we do move as an industry, we tend to try to move quick and it creates a problem. They're buying all of these pieces and they're not being mindful or deliberate or thoughtful on how they all work together to support the human processes of our business.
Well said.
At the end of the day, like staffing agencies, yeah, we're a marketplace, and there's digital marketplaces out there, but we're a marketplace, but we're underpinned by the human being, and if you train and develop and have really good recruiters, those recruiters will not be replaceable by AI. They just won't because machine learning and AI can't discern the soft skills or the human interview like, a recruiter, a well-trained interviewer really can. So that's the value. And we need to make sure that we're supporting that human process. So I'm seeing a lot of people buying technology and working to implement it in a bit of a fragmented kind of Frankenstein type way. And then even worse, they're not actually training their people on the new skills, right? Like just because you get a new tool, if you're going to have a carpenter that's a master carpenter that's great with a hammer, and then you buy that carpenter a nail gun, right? If he goes to work or she goes to work and she starts smashing the nail with the side of the nail gun to pound it in, it's not going to work, right? You just need to teach them actually how to use the new tool effectively, right? To get the result that you want and show how they can actually get greater results with it. So as far as like technology and tech stack, I'm seeing a not quite as deliberate as it should be approach to create this Frankenstein. And then because of the fragmented nature of it, there's not enough training and understanding, which means user adoption is going to be low. It's going to lead to frustration, which is going to lead to reluctance, which is going to lead to, this is why I didn't do this in the first place.
And once again, I'll tie it back to what you said at the onset of this show, strategic planning. It's like, if you're going to do that,
Exactly right.
Don't just get the technology to say, yeah, we did that too. Consult with someone who understands it and figure out what technology is right for you. And again, to your point, technology should complement the recruiting process. There's
100%.
a lot that can be automated that doesn't have to take up a recruiter's time, that will allow them to spend more time on actual recruiting efforts. But that human relationship is really, always has been and always will be, the fundamental basis for the better recruiters out there. You can't replace it by technology 100%.
You guys summed that up real good here. The tech stack is overrated. I'm going to tell you straight up, it's overrated. You ready for this, guys? The shark stack. You ready for this? Social, tech, human. Social media, technology, human connection. That's what I'm coming out with. Tech stack's in the middle. You got to need the other two. Keep it rolling.
Yeah, it can't just be the tech. You're right.
No, you got to have the social media too. People don't understand that. They think they buy technology and the candidates are going to thrive to that. The social media thrives everything, guys, if we learn that.
It does, because really the two value points that a salesperson or recruiter actually drives for an agency, whether it's recruiting, staffing, whatever, are relationships and discernment. You know, you need that person that can really discern if it's a good candidate and it's a good match or a good client to work with. So you need discernment, which takes skills and training and experience, but you need relationships, right? Now, social media is the double-edged sword, right? Because social media itself is a conduit to build relationships, right? But most people do not build relationships with Facebook themselves, right? Or Snapchat or, you know, whatever, TikTok.
It's a bridge to that relationship.
Right. It's the conduit for the relationship. So really what you should look at is you should look at what is the entire process that you're going to take a candidate through, the candidate journey, right? Or the client journey on the sales side, and look for all the opportunities to emphasize and amplify relationship building or discernment. All of those areas should be circled, and you do not digitalize that part of the process, right? You humanize that part of the process. If you can't circle a spot on that candidate journey that shows that you're going to basically have a strong relationship building opportunity or a strong discernment opportunity, that's where you focus on actually supplementing it with technology to make your process more efficient.
I love that.
Extra supplements. It's not the win for all. You know that, right? So I love that, man. The human connection, Dan. That's what I love about you, man. If you still bring that human connection, because I think right now with the tech stack, you only need 3 or 4 of them, but you have to do some research. People come in and say, hey, you need 20 tech stack things. I mean, you got all this money, and I've seen this, Dan. You've probably seen it. You go to an agency and they're spending all this money on the ATS they don't even need, and they're spending like $30,000 on all this technology, and they got 5 people going to work. It's like, what the shit?
Well, and that's because in the past 2 years, tech stack has become the latest buzzword.
It's I don't want to tell you straight up. It's so that name. Come on, guys. It's a big money thing.
Well, of course, and granted, it's important, but you know, you get this. You know, a lot of the firms get this keep up with the Joneses mindset, and they're like, okay, I guess we got to do this. But to your point, Dan and Richard, they go in blind, and that's going to do you more harm than good. And you've got to position it well. And again, talk to your people about what do they need and what's our strategy, and then what technology can help us along that journey. That proves to be successful. When you just bring stuff in because of what other people say and then figure out, okay, now what are we going to do with this? Then you've got troubles.
So that,
because we all know the technology, when we go to these shows, you know that everybody has the all for everything, right? They solve it all. Every technology is the best. So that's where you need somebody like us or Dan to go and say, hey, let's do some research on us and see which ones are fit for you. I mean,
yep.
You know, they got 7 users. Why do you need this big, you know, all this stuff?
And that's it right there. I think because we don't come from a tech progressive industry, there's a lack of knowing or comfort level with it. So we default on looking externally to the marketing or the salespeople of these agencies that promise the blue sky and the rainbows. And they're like, oh, if you use our technology, you're going to have this, 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 or this, right? And you're like, oh, I would love to have that, and that. But where the disconnect is as leaders, we oftentimes don't actually stop to think about, do I really need that? Like, does all of those things that they're promising me solve the biggest problem that is facing my agency and my people right now, right? So a lot of times that answer is no. And just because they can do all of those things doesn't mean that you should add all of those things, right? So as leaders of companies, our job is just to solve the biggest problem facing our agency and our people today. So John, to your point, like, you should just look at, hey, how come we're not on target? How come we're not growing as fast as we want to? Like, why aren't we hitting our goals? Why aren't we achieving our level of success, right? Start internally, look inwards, and then find out those answers. And if it's like, hey, we realize that our fill percentage is lower this year than it was last year. Okay, well, that's a good place to look. Why was it lower? Do I have a candidate shortage and it's legitimate candidate? Or do I just have, bad jobs? Have my clients not kept up with inflation and pay rates, or are they trying to bundle jobs together? And like, do I just have bad jobs? Right. And that's not a technology. That doesn't get solved by technology. That's consultancy. That's teaching your clients how to improve their job. Right. That's a sales technique or good recruiter technique. Or maybe it's like, hey, the market's shifted and my recruiters aren't trained in the new ways to go find talent. They're not leveraging social media the way that maybe they should. They're not engaging with people the way that they should. That's not a new technology automation piece. That's just training and development, right?
Absolutely.
So once you start to figure out like what is the biggest challenge preventing us from getting where we want to go, maybe technology is the answer. Maybe there's a tool out there that can do it, but you really shouldn't go look at tools until you do that root cause analysis, and don't overcomplicate it. We're all too busy for that. You can literally have a 10-minute conversation with your leaders like I just had that will get to the idea of what's the problem you really need to solve. And then look, do I need to train it? Why solve it by skilling my people up, teaching new processes or methods, or is it technology? And then you go from there.
I've always believed that ours is a very simple business, and the people within the business tend to overcomplicate it. So I love what you just said. Don't overthink it. Let's just get to it. And a lot of times it's a lot simpler than you realize. It doesn't have to be a super complex mega story that's involved. Sometimes it's right in front of your face, but you feel that, oh no, it can't just be that. So let's go deeper, let's go broader. A lot of times we don't have to do that.
You're so right on that, John. And I seen this on LinkedIn today. Everybody's complicated. Should I post at this time, this time? Just freaking post what you like in content. It's like they're putting so much into it, the thought. Just post shit out there and see what happens to build an audience.
Yeah,
Simple
start
as
with
that.
activity.
Yes.
Start with activity. And then graduate to
That's where I started, right?
Just start, right? What's that quote that's you don't have to be great to start, but you have to start to be great.
Love that.
So, but back to your guys' point, I got to share this. This just happened to me. I was doing an ad hoc coaching session around the topic of the cold call. And I know this is a controversial topic. Half the market says it's dead. Half the market says it's not. Irregardless of where you fit on the side of it, I will say 100% of people should agree that the average person overthinks the cold call, right? And I was literally doing an ad hoc coaching session with a brand new salesperson, training them up. And they were walking me through their cold call, and they're like going through, a lot about the company history they work for and all of this and what they do. And I'm like, you're overthinking it. I was like, we're not trying to sell on a cold call. I was like, all right, the client you're interrupting doesn't care about your company. They need to know what you do. They need to know that you're a recruiter. Doesn't matter if you're on the staffing side or you're a recruiter. That's a universal term. You're a recruiter, and you work with companies like the people you're talking to, and you place the positions that they're hiring for. And you want to see if they'd like to have a conversation with you about those positions. That's it. I was like, it's just simple. Don't overthink it. We're not trying to diagnose anything yet. And I'm like, as soon as you just take a step back and just oversimplify it and hit those key points, they're going to say, yes, I'm interested. I could use your help, or no, I'm not. If they say, no, you're not, that's the gift of time. That's an acceptable answer, right? You don't need to cry or be upset or think, oh, I failed because I didn't take a meeting. No, it's a sorting process. So it really is sometimes you just got to take a step back and simplify it. But that's the point about, overthinking things.
Well, I love that, Dan, because on my calls, it's a coffee chat or beer chat when I'm talking to a client. I want to get to know them. Let's bullshit about football or whatever. At the end of the day, yes, I'm trying to help you with the workforce, because anybody can say, yeah, I can bring you workers. Know each other. And that's simple.
When I train recruiters, my guidance to them is every time you pick up the phone, your overarching goal would be just to have a conversation.
Bingo.
We're purveyors of information. So you have a conversation, you exchange information, and then you figure out how to use that information and if it can be mutually beneficial. But above all, just have a conversation with the person. And to your point, don't overthink it. Get to know the person as a person. That will lead to deeper conversations, and you take it from there.
And one thing, Dan, I got to ask both of you, what do you think of a script, man? I hate scripts, man. They're stuttering over it, and they're like trying to put all the bullet points together.
I think it depends on the level of the recruiter. So I think when someone is brand new in the business and they're just starting out, if they write their own script, it doesn't sound like a script. And what a script does, like I'm a proponent of new recruiters like scripting out their 30-second introduction, so to speak, when they get on the phone with someone, because that's the first impression. So if they compose it, it doesn't sound like a script. And the mindset is, don't worry about what you're going to say, just worry about how you're going to say it. And if they don't have it, they stumble, they falter, they overthink it. It's different every time. The brain's working overtime. So I think there's a place for scripts. I don't think it should sound robotic like your telemarketer script where you can totally tell they're just reading.
Yeah. So I'm the same way. I will say though that I don't like scripts, and I think what I'm going to explain probably aligns exactly with what John just said, because I don't think he's actually scripting people out or even having them kind of write word for word a script that they're going to read. I teach frameworks, right?
Oh,
Kind of that point that you need to take people through. And a framework, depending on what you're doing, has to align with the psychological process of human beings, right? So if you're making a cold call, there's a natural process that we as human beings go through when someone calls us, right? And you have to take people through that process, kind of, who am I talking to? Why are they calling me? And why is this important to me? Right. That's what we needed to go through. And then some sort of validation, call to action. Right. So like if you teach a framework and you explain to them, hey, these are the questions that the person on the other end is going to be thinking in their head. Right. Or maybe even outright asking you if they're just truly a verbal presenter. Right. So you just have to answer those. This is who I am. This is why I'm calling you. And this is why it might be important to you. Right. And if you frame it, that's your framework, and then you insert the words, so it's yours, right? Then it's going to be more impactful and more authentic, and that's,
Well said.
so I teach frameworks, not necessarily scripting, but I do think it's important that people have the knowledge of the vernacular in their head of how they're going to approach things, especially what John said, the 30-second commercial. Like, that's just the answer of, like, if you go to any networking event or any family function or anywhere in the world and someone says, oh, what do you do? Like, you should just know that exact answer that's going to clearly define what you do, so people can attach that to your personal brand. So when they experience that out in the world, they then think of you.
Exactly.
And I know someone on this call here that does a great job of that, right, Shark?
man.
I can't.
What do you do? I'm like a fist pump and a hug. And like, you know what I do? 5 people jobs with energy. But no, you hit it right on the button, Dan. That's what it's all about, man. Getting to know people. One thing I will say about cold calls, do a little bit of research. If they're looking for a couple engineers, look out on Indeed and say, hey, I see you got a couple engineers. Did you get them hired yet? Boom, that's a great intro right there. Right there. Boom.
In today's
Like,
market,
damn.
in today's market, with all the technology we have access to, when you think of a cold call, no recruiter ever has to make a true cold call. You know something about the person. I mean,
Right.
I'll date myself, and you guys can probably appreciate it. Back in the day, you had a phone list at a company and you were dialing in. And you had no idea what was going to be on the other end of the phone.
I've been there.
Yeah, which I always found fun. I always enjoyed the hunt.
Yeah, it's like a blind bag. You don't know what's going to be in there, but it's fun.
Absolutely.
All right, Johnny, any final thoughts, man, on our show, man? We could go on and on for like 3 hours on this, man.
As always, I have been jotting down notes because I'm always a student of the game. Dan, first of all, thank you so much. I loved a couple things that stood out that I loved that I want to reemphasize. Machine AI cannot discern soft skills, and have a cycle of your recruiting process. Anywhere there's human relationship or discernment opportunities, those should be done by a human, not a machine. And that's something that every recruiting firm and every recruiter should pay attention to not lose that human element. So great stuff as always, man.
I appreciate it. I'm glad you guys invited me on. I had a lot of fun. Anytime that you're going to welcome me back, I will be here. I love cutting up with a couple fellow industry professionals.
You got it, brother. Hey, any final thoughts, Dan? You want to shoot out there to the audience, man?
I would just say, don't forget to train your people. This is a people industry. The only way you're going to grow your company is by growing your people, and align them and what they want personally and professionally with your organizational goals, and just support your people, and you will have success in this industry is my parting shot for today.
Well said.
Sums it up. And I'm going to sum it up like this: high C, human, interact, connect. Simple as that, man. Get yourself a high C drink today. Hey guys, enjoy the time. Dan, like always, man, see you guys later. And Johnny, I'll see you next week in Vegas, brother.
Yes, you will.
All right. Have fun, y'all.
Take
Enjoy
care.
your weekend.